Hello, guys. Today we're going to continue working on reviewing our ex vegan study report. It will be the chapter that I called Me and Others. And this encompasses conflicts with others. We're going to see which lifestyle, which diet was more conducive of people engaging in conflicts with others online and in their immediate circle. Then we're going to study what fraction of participants were actually engaged in certain types of activism, vegan activism or ex vegan activism, then charities, who was contributing to charities, and also who was a member of community. And then lastly, we're going to look at the relationship between people's dietary choices and their spiritual life. So I think naming, like grouping these things, these chapters as me and others is kind of probably adequate. I don't know. Maybe suggest something else in the comments, but not that it matters. So let's first look at how this thing looked in the survey. So what our participants were presented with. These are just cropped out of this from the survey Excel sheet. So the first question is, did or do you engage in conflicts with other people because of your diet? Before we became vegan, as early vegan, midterm, end stage, and ex-vegan. Then, the next question was, where are you a part of a community membership club or online group supporting your diet? And there will be options. We'll see them on the plots. And then the next question is, did or do you attach spiritual context to your diet? So this is what participants were instructed to work with. And now let's look at the first plot regarding conflicts. So this plot shows the number of participants and whether they were engaging in conflict with others online, with family, with friends, with colleagues, with strangers, or whether they did not engage in conflicts with others throughout the different life stages of their life, so to speak, in the context of being vegan or not being vegan. So gray color corresponds to before vegan stage, green is early vegan, pink is midterm vegan, blue is end stage vegan, and yellow is ex-vegan. And here I put for convenience how you can read this plot. When you look at each data segment here, so each set of answers, this direction is timeline. So basically the leftmost line will be before vegan, then early vegan, midterm vegan, end stage vegan, and ex-vegan, such that you can navigate not only using colors but also the directionality, because there are different perceptions that are more favorable for each person. So this is how you can read this plot. So follow the arrow, meaning timeline. And so let's analyze this graph. What do we see right away? We see that almost no one engaged in conflicts related to diet and lifestyle prior to going vegan. There was just a small fraction of people, just a couple of people, who had conflicts with their family. But before veganism, no one, almost no one, felt like it was a thing to engage in conflicts revolving around the diet and lifestyle. We see, however, if we compare this before vegan and after vegan, we see that quite a bit of people actually engage in conflict with others after quitting veganism. And so this is an interesting shift. Definitely, there is much more influence of certain acquired knowledge, of certain experience that pushes people to strike the conflict or be involved in some conflict as ex vegans. We see this shift. So, this is the trend that I wanted to pay attention first, because this is a global change in people's lives. Suddenly, this thing became a thing of acute interest, something that people want to defend or be proactive about in the society. Now, another interesting thing when we look at this no data corresponding to people not engaging in conflict with anybody, we see that after becoming vegan, the smallest number of people were engaging in conflict as at the end stage veganism. So this tells me that people definitely started eating humble pie, but at that point, and they were no longer feeling that their understanding of lifestyle and diet was particularly authoritative to be very vocal about it. And we see that the most conflicts, if we just look at this no thing, the most conflicts occurred when people were early vegans, then followed by slight bump here at midterm veganism. slight reduction in number of people who engaged in conflict. So we see that veganism definitely early and midterm veganism was associated with people going out and striking some drama around their lifestyle, or again, being involved in the conflict. So this is the general trend. And now let's see the breakdown. What were the points of application of that fighter energy? So we see that online. The if we, let's not go, I guess, chapter by chapter, part by like area by area. Let's look at the major trend. We see that the most conflicts in general occurred with family among early vegans and then midterm vegans. So we see that this is a big trend. Again, not surprising, we studied this data where we analyzed the relationships with family and the age of becoming vegan. We know that a lot of people became vegan as teenagers, so this is kind of not surprising. But even then, even adult people, people who already don't live with their family, immediate family, they might also engage in conflict because you visit people. I gave this actually on my page. I have community page, right? So where I post different things, surveys, like mini surveys, some like fun things, some updates. And once I made a post where I made a poll for people. For example, you're vegan and your grandma made you some like pie or something, that's something that you like when you were little, and you visited your grandma after like long break, and she's so excited to share this with you, to share this sentimental moment. And the poll was like, you're vegan, so would you reject that pie that's not vegan? Would you tell your grandma that no, like throw this garbage away, I value animals more than your stupid sentiments, you stupid woman? Or would you tell your grandma that okay, I'll eat it at home and then discard this pie? Or what, how would you react basically? Or whether you would accept it and you will break your veganism for to not hurt feelings of your grandma, type of thing. So that was an interesting poll. You probably can find it on my page. But yeah, with family, yeah, there's a lot of contention there, and it's not secret. Especially the younger you are, the more prone you're likely to engage in conflicts about lifestyle. Also, though, if for example you go vegan, some you break the pattern of your family, you break some dietary pattern of your family. Let's say you go on like whole foods diet or raw vegan diet or high raw vegan diet, and certain health problem that's common in your family reverses. Of course, you will be there with the banner like, please go raw vegan, everybody should go raw vegan, and type of thing. You might become this spokesperson on behalf of veganism, and that also can create some tension in the family. So this is not surprising data here, and we see again that drop off when people become in-stage vegans. They become much less interested to express their opinions. We see that, yeah, this little bump here before veganism, there were some conflicts. But again, we had people who were vegetarian. Also, we had conflicts because some people were not vegan and their partners were vegan. So they had conflicts inside of their family because they were not vegan. And then they got forced into veganism. Not forced, I guess, but kind of coerced into veganism. And then the conflicts resolved. Then we see that the next highest line here is also among early vegans, green color, and conflict with friends. So that was another big thing. So it's half of our participants actually engaged in conflicts with friends. If we look at family, it's more than half, so 15 participants. I remind you that in total we had 24 participants in the study. So 15 of them had conflicts with family. Half of them were having conflicts with friends as well. Or, I mean, these people could choose multiple options here. Then we see that the next thing is online. But what we see here, interestingly, online, the keyboard warriors were not so active, actually, which is surprising during veganism. Most conflicts still were observed in real life with family and friends. We see that online, only midterm vegans were more active, so a third of our midterm vegans were engaging in conflicts online, and a smaller fraction as early vegans, which I don't know if that can be an artifact of the fact some participants are in their 50s. Maybe that reduced the fraction because such thing as online debate was not a thing for some people, participants of the study. And then we see that some people even argued with strangers. So we have a quarter of people, 6 people, as early vegans and midterm vegans, they were engaging in conflicts with strangers. And we see that consistently towards end stage veganism, people stopped being so vocal about their lifestyle. This is a general trend. Another interesting thing, look at this online. We see ex vegan keyboard warriors because I think the reason for that is that people just see so much nonsense, they become awake to the madness, the nonsense that's going on in the vegan publicism, and they become very triggered because you sometimes you see extremely malnourished person and you see that they're vegan. Again, I'll tell you, every ex-vegan will see a vegan in the crowd. So you see all those people online, how they spread nonsense. You also sometimes demand justice because you follow some influencer and then you realize that this is a grift. You just realize it because you experienced such terrible things because of following the lifestyle of certain influencer that you just want to tell the whole world, please don't follow this bullshit. And so you go online, you start like talking to people in the comment section who, with idolatry, say that, but this person teaches how to eat everything, how to stuff your belly and have flat belly at the same time. Everybody wants to be this thin, amenorrheic creature. So that's what likely happens. So you want to save people, there is this like urge to save the world, to wake people up from the madness. Then with family, of course, also sometimes people discover new ways of eating after veganism. For example, before going vegan, you know that your family was eating and no cereal for breakfast, then some, I don't know, some whatever bread based diet. Let's say bread based diet, bread and some microwavable things, right? Polished up with some meat and dairy products. So you may have that situation going on in your family. Then you go through veganism because of health, for example. You wanted to improve your health among other things. You cannot escape that. You wanted to escape the familial pattern of eating. So you are pursuing better health. You start eating better oftentimes after quitting veganism. And when you start eating better, you're like, family, new thing. Like, remember, it was veganism back in the day. And now I realize that there must be something else. There's something different. I know. Listen to me now. Like, this is new thing. So there might be some conflicts because of that, because you just discover a new thing. And then with friends, yeah, it's less so. Strangers and colleagues, there's still, you see, one person has arguments with colleagues and strangers as ex-vegan. Please share in the comments what's the story like. So I find this quite interesting. And the trend of how people get quiet towards end stage. Nevertheless, though, there are still people who were active as end stage vegans, though. Quarter of people were actively engaging in conflicts online with family as end stage vegans. This is quite interesting to me. But yeah, if we summarize this, so participants engage the most in online conflict as midterm vegan after quitting veganism. Early and midterm vegans tend to engage in conflicts with their friends and family the most. And most participants never engaged in conflicts related to lifestyle prior to going vegan, and this trend switches. Now that we summarized the conflict part, let's move on to activism, charities, and communities. Let's shrink this thing. So these are some justice warriors. Actually, so funny, I had a psychologist, presumably psychologist, a clinical psychotherapist, and they were in such an outrage when I talked about something related to veganism. It was not a psychologist. Like if they were a psychologist, they would have a habit of reflection and conducting a dialogue in a slightly different way. So it was not psychologist, but they wanted to pretend. This was a troll, I think, that said that they were psychologists, but they were bringing up something related to activism. Like I made an impression that I was severely like against all forms of activism type of thing. But I mean, to me, it's not it's subject on its own. I don't know. I have too much to say to talk about it because it's pointless to talk about it, kind of. So they went in super outrage. But yeah, this participation, lifestyle, communities, and charity. By communities, and I meant, for example, when I was instructing, I had actually instruction videos for participants. I instructed them to think about whether they are a member of some channel. So they sit on some forums, they sit on some YouTube channels, and they like write comments. They're not just subscribed to some channel, but they actually watch the channel regularly. So they have this what's called parasocial relationship with an influencer. They make certain like channel, they make certain outlet part of their life. So they participate effectively, but as passive member. So they just consume someone's content. Then communities, you can also have YouTube channel, you can make videos, you can write blog posts, you can be in social media. Then activism here, like green is communities, charity, and whatever, passive member. Activism means that you actually participate in certain marches, you participate in demonstrations, you close down the restaurants, or I don't know, organize an event. So basically, you do something, you invest energy, you are proactive in some activism related to lifestyle. And also charity, active member of charity or being an activism, all activist also contributes to, can be expressed as participation in charity when you donate money, when you donate your time to do something. So basically, you got this. You got the point. And so here we have passive member, being activist, actual activist who goes in the fields and does something, and no. Here we have again number of participants, and we're back to our conventional timeline on the x-axis: before vegan, early vegan, midterm, end stage, and ex-vegan. Let's look at the major trend here. First, the highest bar here on the whole plot is before vegan, no. People were not part of any community or charity or activism group. 21% reported this data. So we see that prior to going vegan, majority of people were not a part of any community, lifestyle, community, charity, or activism. However, we see that a few people were either passive member of some community, and a couple of people were activists. I actually have one interview in which person was vegetarian and they were a part of activist group for animal rights. Then they became vegan. So this transition was from vegetarian to vegan, and they stayed being a part of that activist group. When we go see the next tallest line, we see that as ex-vegans, the number of people who are not a member of any community, charity, or activist group decreased. So more people actually started engaging or remained engaged in certain activity like that. Then we see as an end stage vegan, the trend is quite similar here. And let's see here. Almost 50% of the participants were passive or active members of lifestyle related communities or charities as early and midterm vegans. So let's look here. When people became vegan, yes, we see the surge in the number of passive members of communities, charity, or activist groups. And then we see that people actually, by the midterm veganism, some people became active members. So they started actually doing something. And we see that it's half of people. So 50% of our people were actively engaged in some affairs related to, I guess, animal rights and whatnot. But we see that they were either passive members or active members with large fraction. So the fraction of people who were members of certain charity or anything was increasing towards midterm veganism, reaching its maximum. Then we see that there is a tremendous drop off of activism, active participation in all those activities towards end stage veganism. Only one person remained an activist at end stage veganism. Everybody, all of those people, so a third of our participants who were activists, only one person remained. So people dropped off. They remained passive members, however. But there was again an increase in people who were not a part of anything at this point. So this percent increased. And then we see that there are actually some activists, couple of activists as ex-vegans. And there are people who are passive members. Again, I'll remind you what passive means. You're consuming the content, you're just passively supporting certain group or community. And again, we know that there are a lot of channels that are carnivore, animal based. So actually being a vegan deterioration, even being on this channel, watching the videos constantly and commenting can count here. Then we see this, if we look through conclusions, towards the end stage, the number of activists dropped compared to the midterm vegans. Again, discussed that. And another big trend here is that, yeah, ex vegans participate in lifestyle communities and activism more than prior to going vegan. So, same trend is here. People become more, they remain engaged in certain thing like that. They don't completely ditch their lifestyle habits, the interest in general, the interest in how I could do better type of thing when they quit veganism. The how changes, the what doesn't. So this is the main principle. When you quit veganism, you still understand what you understood as a vegan. You just add to this knowledge, you refine it, you adapt it to different understanding of things, different knowledge and experimental data. But your core personality does not change through that. You just understand things differently. It's rare that core values of human change. They just get adapted to certain circumstances because our values are constantly going to be challenged. And I mentioned in one of the videos that something that you're most passionate about, like absolutely like overwhelmingly passionate, will always teach you to be moderate through throwing you from this height of excitement about something. This is, I mean, I'm not, maybe it's my projections, but this is my experience. This is what happens. So when you're particularly excited about something, likely there will be a lesson that will teach you to moderate your excitement and add more details, refine your understanding of things. Understand that something that you're so excited about might not work for everyone, might not work for you eventually. So something that a lot of things need to pass the test of time, so to speak. But yeah, this shows me that people still remain attentive to their lifestyle, they remain attentive to the matters of ecology, in general, how to organize life thoughtfully. But now let's move on to spiritual life. So this plot shows us association between diet and spiritual life. The question options were quite simple. Diet was associated with my spiritual life. Diet was not associated with my spiritual life or context. So green is yes, no is red. Here I was looking to illustrate this graph, to illustrate the concept, to give some association. I was looking for some inclusive, so to speak, picture because spiritual beliefs, they differ. Our perception of spiritual life varies from person to person. But conceptually, I think there is this archetype that it's a gateway to something. So that's why I use this picture. I feel like it's most inclusive for all religions, for all near religious things and spiritual life. Association between that and spiritual life. Number of participants and stages of veganism on the x-axis. We see here that end stage vegans and ex-vegans are actually identical. So the same number of people reported that they did not have any association between their diet and spiritual life as end stage vegans and then as ex-vegans. This is an interesting one. Then another thing that we see is that before veganism, people also rarely associated their spiritual life and diet. We see that 21% did not have any relationship between their spirituality and their diet. And then, boom, as early vegans, we see that half of people, the split became 50-50. Half of people now experienced or developed the connection between their spiritual life and their diet. And then this trend for once switched. And then we see that midterm vegans were most likely to have their diet and spiritual life related in some way. And then we see this drop off in the end stage veganism that stayed. And here another thing we see that as ex-vegans, people are more likely to associate their diet and spiritual life than prior to going vegan. So this is also the metamorphosis of veganism related that was induced by veganism. Another one. You see, all of these things, veganism affects the life of people after quitting. You don't just default back to what you did before. In some areas of life, you just develop some new concepts, some new understanding that you carry on after quitting veganism. So we see that, yeah, the fraction of people who start associating their diet and spiritual life, it increased. Spiritual life, again, I did not ask my participants to specify anything of this kind. So this is the graph that's fully open to interpretations, speculations, because again, everybody can define their spiritual life in any way possible. I actually was meant to make a video on spiritual life and changing diets because, raw veganism, especially, is highly related to spirituality because it's supposed to cleanse you. It's supposed to make you much more sensitive. It's supposed to make your intuition stronger. It's supposed to deepen your connection with nature, with this like spirit of nature. It's supposed to sometimes people report even like some psychic or transpersonal experiences, some interesting things. There are some explanations. Of course, if people go into deep starvation, if people are into detox culture, they will experience some things because the brain gets starved. And when brain is starved, it can start sending certain signals, some interesting things that experiences that people have never experienced before. Then yeah, with raw veganism, another facet of that is that you are seeking natural life. So you are getting it's actually an interesting gateway also into the understanding of your relation to nature, and this naturalistic thing starts awakening in you. You start identifying as a part of the of existence of the whole creation and everything, or evolutionary product. So you start like embodying these ideas much deeper. And some people go into all sorts of practices, experimenting with their mind, with their consciousness. I mean, I myself, I have been practicing those things. And as a person who practices certain things, they're not like esoteric per se. They are just utilizing normal biochemistry. Again, since we live in a natural world, since we have a natural being that we're too stimulated with information, too stimulated with stressors, our brain has to process far more information that is synthetic information than we would normally experience that in nature. Or if we lived in more natural environment where speed of information transmission was much smaller. So we would be stimulated mostly with natural, easy to perceive and digest bits of information in nature. And that's why in the modern world where we live, actually our economic system is abstract largely. The we don't, for example, we don't go like hunt our food and then consume it. We need to do something abstract to get something material nowadays. And then information that is being shared is literally sourced from all over the world. So an average human that lives right now on Earth is subjected to analytics coming from the rest of the world, even though people don't know their neighbor. They don't navigate well in their intimate surroundings. Most people struggle to build close, intimate relationships, build some community around them. We struggle to live as families. We struggle to like coexist physically, and instead we are locating our brain resources, which are limited. Our brain has only 24 hours per day. 8 hours are for sleeping, and then and then whenever people have a pause to sit and process information in this default state of brain, people turn on the TV or they go scroll on the internet, never allowing brain to fully process information. So that's why our brain just doesn't function physiologically. That's why it's important to conduct certain practices that would allow it some rest, recovery, information processing, and actually to be able to focus to what we really want. Because we live in a huge mall right now, informational mall, and we're not shopping necessarily for what we want. We open any resource, any outlet, this hell machine. We open it and we're blasted with a bunch of information that we weren't looking for. It's effectively identical to walking in some noisy outdoors market back in the day that you would do only infrequently. Nowadays we do it all the time and we don't have actual human connection. So it's also a deficient thing. It's like sun tanning with partially blocking the sun spectrum, right? So you decided, okay, I'll block from like 300 nanometers down to 500 nanometers, everything beyond 500 nanometers of wavelength, I will allow in my skin. You're not designed for that. You're designed to get the full spectrum. So that's a side note. But basically, yeah, our brain is not working as it's intended. And it's overloaded. That's why spiritual hygiene or mental hygiene, I prefer to call it, because I believe that everything is biochemical or electromagnetic. All those things, they totally make sense and they totally take place in my personal life. And then when I talk about, for example, being raw vegan versus being meat eater, how that affects things. Again, in my picture of the world, when my criteria are the thing is practical. So spiritual life, in my opinion, should serve some practical purpose. Whatever you call spiritual life or mental hygiene, you can call it, should serve some practical purpose, should relieve your stress, should make you more efficient, should make you calmer, should make you happier. With that in mind, the context of my spiritual life did not change when I started eating meat, but I believe that person cannot be spiritually fit when their body is challenged, when their body is solving some survival problems. It's just impossible. Spirituality, in that case, when there is some global problem that haunts the entire body, in that case, spirituality is a form of escapism. It's not. I believe that natural fitness, natural optimum, is the most spiritual state of being. When you consume food that makes you feel healthy, that makes you feel good, that biochemically tells your brain that you are fine, that you're doing good, then it's a pathway to being more spiritual in this natural, practical context. This is my take on that. I don't like thinking about that there is some entity, some like father figure that's supposed to be punishing someone for something, some like imaginary like father figure, right? That's supposed to be punishing someone for doing something that's necessary for their body. I mean, that never was the case for me. That when I was a raw vegan, that my spirituality was influenced by me being like a good girl, and that some father figure was supposed to praise me for that. No, I think that spirituality starts with respecting the needs of the body primarily, not repressing them. So that's my take. Personal, please don't. I mean, you. I won't prohibit you to feel any feelings about it because you're entitled to the freedom of experiencing your feelings. But yeah, just understand that it's my take on that. And so what we see is that if we summarize this graph is that diet was more associated with spiritual life during veganism than before or after veganism. That's one major trend that I did not mention yet. Then the highest rate of connection was observed in midterm vegans, and the association between diet and spirituality decreased and remained equal in end stage and ex vegans. And another trend that yes, after quitting veganism, more some people remained in some association between spiritual life and not veganism, and their diet. So that's another lasting outcome of veganism, as we can see, that people started being more engaged in certain communities and charities. Then people also engage in conflict with others more after quitting veganism, and they associate their spiritual life and diet more. So here we're closing out this topic, and we are starting to dig into the experience of quitting veganism next. So I'll see you then.